Daily. My name is Laura Collins, and I'm so glad that you are joining us here this week. Now, this week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we are going to hear from some of our local outreach partners, and we're so excited that they are here with us to share a little bit of their heart and to guide us in our morning devotions. Tuesdays, we are always going to pray through a psalm together, and then on Thursdays, we are doing another prayer moment. So we are so glad that you're here with us all week long. And we want to thank you so much for your generosity here at Compass. We have an amazing event coming up called Night to Shine. And this is something we do every single year. But this year, because of the pandemic, we're having to do a drive-through only Night to Shine event. But you can still help with that. You can volunteer, you can donate. And to find out more information, you can go to compassnighttoshine.com. And we want to say thank you so much for your continued generosity. If you want to continue to partner with us, you can do that three ways. You can go to compass.church/give. You could give through the Compass app, or you could text Compass Church to 77977. Now let's go ahead and worship together.
When night is falling, when fear is coming, still you're calling me. When faith is lost and my hope exhausted, you will be my strength. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo in my soul. Oh, 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 in my soul. Oh, oh, oh. In every season, you keep repeating promises to me. Now there's no stopping what you have started till it is complete. When my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo in my soul. Oh, soul. Oh, in my soul. Oh, soul. Oh, when my mind says I'm not good enough, God, you're enough for me. I've decided I'm not giving up, 'cause you won't give up on me. You won't give up on me. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo. Your love is holding on, it won't let go. I feel it breaking out like an echo in my soul. Oh, 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 in my soul. Oh, soul. Oh.
Hi, I'm Brian Smith, president of Dallas Christian College. If you're like me, the last few months have been an opportunity for reflection. I've been reflecting on my life, the life of my family, the life of friends, in a time with so much unrest, in a time where life perhaps seems more fragile than normal. It's made me at least consider this big question that I want to challenge all of you with today. What's really important? What's really worth living for? What's really worth dying for? What do I do with my priorities and the things that I care about? My work, my pursuits, my education, where I put my attention, whatever all of that is. What really matters? You know, you can ask that question in a lot of different ways. You can say, what matters for my life? What matters for my family? What matters for my future, my career? All those things are important. All of those things matter. But for a believer in Christ, a disciple of Jesus, we have to ask those questions with eternity in mind. So how can we consider today how to live in light of eternity? Realizing that sometimes Christians are accused of being escapists, that we live like only the next world matters, only heaven matters, only the new heaven and the new earth matters. And in a way that's true, but God designed our world and our lives to absolutely matter, not so that we only focus on eternal things and only focus on heaven, but so that we realize that things in this life that maybe are mundane, maybe seem simple, can have eternal consequences, good or bad. So I want to ask you to consider a couple of verses of scripture that can help orient us to this question. First of all, in James, it says, our life is like a vapor. It appears for a little while and then vanishes away. That seems rather apt for our world today. And yet in 1 John, it says the world is passing away, and also its lusts, earthly glory and fame and worldly recognition is all fading and will all pass away. I don't know about you, when I look at that, I think all those things that I want, all those things that I desire, all those things that I pursue after, are they those things that lead to earthly glory and fame and recognition? Will they just pass away? Do they really matter? Or how about this one in Matthew, the words of Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount? Do not lay up treasures on earth because rust and moth destroy them. Earthly wealth will not last, so lay up your treasures in heaven. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. How is it that you will lay your treasures up? How is it that you will invest in relationships, in the mundane activities of life, and maybe even in the big things? Asking the question, how do I do and think and live ultimately in light of eternity? Can you imagine a life where at least one thing a day, one activity, one pursuit was pursued because of eternal things? Maybe just one thing a day. Maybe we could imagine your entire life being that way. But to be realistic for a moment, most of us, we have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to do all of those things that, maybe indirectly they link to eternity. But could you imagine a life where you oriented it in such a way that you were giving everything that you had, looking at laying your treasures up in heaven, looking at how does this affect eternity? What do I mean by eternity? I've kind of used that word, and I've kind of expected those of you listening to know what I'm talking about. And what I mean by that is a lot of things, but I'll boil it down to these two things. Ultimately, when I say in light of eternity, I do mean the destiny of all Christ followers to be with God forever. That's true. But I also mean those things that are of eternal significance. And really, those are boiled down biblically to a couple of things. One, the greatest commands, to love the Lord your God with all your heart and your soul and your mind and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And ultimately, the Great Commission, to make disciples of all nations. Those two things, at the end of the day, loving God, loving people, and helping all people become disciples of Jesus is ultimately the things that are of eternal significance. In Colossians, Paul says it this way: since then you have been raised with Christ, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things, for you died and your life is now hidden with Christ in God. I love this passage because it simplifies, doesn't make it easy, but it simplifies the entire discipleship process for a believer. It's interesting. It's almost like saying, no, it's not about necessarily rules. It's not about a formula. It's just giving all of your heart and your mind and everything that you are to eternal concerns all the time. That's it. That's all. And of course, that's not easy. It's difficult, but it's simple. It's straightforward. It's just orient everything that you care about, everything that you choose to do, all of your will, everything that you think, taking every thought captive for Christ Jesus, absolutely everything on those eternal things. Just that, all the time. Can you imagine your life if you just increase that kind of thinking and that kind of choices that you make just 1% or 2% or 10% over years? What if you just set your heart and your minds on things above, even a few minutes longer each day? You made choices in the way that you do the mundane things in life, whether eating and drinking and sleeping and exercising or whatever it may be, with eternal significance in mind. What if you, for example, exercise not to look good, but to make yourself healthier so that you can serve the Lord more and be about His business for eternal purposes? What if that was the motivation? What if you spent time with your family and really invested in your children and your spouse, not just because you love them, although that is absolutely, as we said, one of the greatest commands, but more so that how can I help them be a better disciple of Christ? Which not only affects now, but it affects eternity. And not just for them, but for their children, and for their children, and for generations to come. What if we viewed even the mundane things in life, even the things, those daily choices, as having eternal consequences? Because whether we realize it or not, they do. God did not design this life to be just a fleeting moment that didn't matter at all for eternity. In fact, it's the opposite. The reason Christians invest so much in our world and trying to bring about social justice, trying to bring about the end of poverty, and all of those things that we can list, is because we believe that those things do have eternal consequences, even though they're temporal realities. Mother Teresa said it this way: not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. What small things could you do with great love that maybe won't make you famous? Maybe you won't even feel good doing them, but that perhaps one act of kindness could have eternal significance in the life of someone else? What if you're kind to a young child who has never seen kindness from an adult? What if you're giving to someone who has never gotten anything in their life freely without strings attached? Even the mundane things could be done with great love and could make a huge difference in the life of that person. What about in relationships? Francis Chan says it this way: God's definition of what matters is pretty straightforward. He measures our lives by how we love. And really, that's what we're talking about, how we love God and love others. And if we are focused on those things, then ultimately we are concerned about eternity, eternal things. But everything else, your education, your career, your work, even the way you pursue recreation, literally refreshing recreation, do you rest so that you can be about eternal things? Do you pursue education because of what it will prepare you to do, the way that it will make you influence others in eternal ways? What about career? What about work? Not just working in a Christ-like manner, but potentially using your business to make huge kingdom impact, eternal impact in the world. Do you want this said about you? The Apostle Paul says this: "For I am being poured out like a drink offering," right near the end of his life, "and the time for my departure is near. I fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing. I want to be able to say that. And, you know, there are plenty of days where I'm not sure I could honestly say I feel like I've fought that good fight. I'm not sure that I could say I've really kept the faith. Sure, I'm still faithful to the Lord, but there are days where I'm not putting my heart and mind on eternal things, on things above. And yet, I want to be able to say words like Paul, to be able to say that, yeah, I wasn't perfect, made a lot of mistakes, and I am a forgiven sinner, but that at the end of the day, at the end of my life, that more often than not, I was pursuing eternity more than anything. There's a graduate of Dallas Christian College. Her name's Lori. She was in Guatemala for well over 20 years, and she led a school called Morning Glory Christian Academy. I'm told that very early on, she was interested in missions and teaching. She came to Dallas Christian College and graduated, and then went to Guatemala to serve for well over 20 years. Today, that school runs over 600 children. And if you go back and you do the math, she and those that she leads have affected the lives of thousands of children in Guatemala, where the average education is around 5th grade, but many of them have received a full education through high school and are now leaders, influencers for Christ in that country. She mentored women and churches throughout Guatemala. She married a Guatemalan man who himself plants churches. And she had a commitment like not many others I've ever seen. She had an illness that meant that she couldn't fly. She wouldn't probably ever get to come home to the United States. She passed away fairly recently, but she gave decades of her life selflessly to the children of Guatemala. How many thousands, and then multiply the influence of those children who are now adults, many of them. How many thousands of people are affected in eternal ways because she selflessly, sacrificially stayed and committed her life to a place like that. She'd probably never be famous for that, although honestly she was Woman of the Year in Guatemala one year, an American. You know, her ashes today, she went to be with Jesus recently, are spread in Guatemala, the place that she loved. And as I ask you to consider the way that you might reprioritize your life, reprioritize the way that you pursue things, I want to tell you a story of one more, a missionary to China. This was in the 1940s, missionary to China who, during World War II, went to the Philippines and was working among the villages there, preaching the gospel and raising up leaders. But during World War II, the Japanese, of course, occupied the Philippines. And he and most of his family, some of his kids and his wife, one of his oldest child was here in America in school, were captured in the Santo Tomas POW camp in the Philippines. Now, at first, it wasn't so bad, although being a prisoner of war is no doubt not a good thing. But toward the end of their time there, it got really bad, where fully grown men were well under 100 pounds. They were literally starving. And I want to show you how this deep commitment of this man and his family led to so many things. And here it is. You may not know the story of General Douglas MacArthur, but there was several options for where the Allied troops were going to attack next to hopefully win the war. There was plenty of other options other than the Philippines, but he famously had said, "I shall return." And so he won the argument, and he did indeed return. Literally, the day before all of those prisoners were to be executed, the Allies came and liberated that camp. And Vernon Newland and his family and many others were celebrating. Emaciated though they were celebrating and dancing because they had been liberated by the American soldiers. They had been given new life. They had been freed against all odds the day before they were to be executed in horrible conditions. And as he's celebrating, as he's dancing, he runs around a building and sees a line of dead American soldiers that had given their lives to liberate that camp. and give he and his family a new life. At that moment, and for years later, he took that moment and said, look at that sacrifice that they gave for me. How much more did Christ sacrifice for them, for me, for the world? What will that have me do? Well, he decided to spend the rest of his life continuing his mission to raise up leaders. And he started 5 Christian colleges, 2 of which still exist today, one of which is Dallas Christian College. Raising up leaders that will make these kinds of commitments, like Lori and like Vernon Newland, to give all that they are, all of the time, putting all of their hearts and all of their minds on things above. So will you consider perhaps reprioritizing what you do, even in small things? Let me leave you with this one last quote. This has always struck me, and this is by a guy named Jim Elliot, who indeed gave his life for the gospel, who famously died while preaching the gospel to a tribe. He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. What will you give to gain what you cannot lose? Eternity.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you for taking time to spend your morning with us in devotion. Don't forget that you can share Compass Daily at any point going forward on Facebook or on YouTube. Share it with your friends, your family, your coworkers, anyone in your life that needs to be encouraged today. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time on Compass Daily.